if you are a member of Congress and you're a Democrat, like this has been your opportunity to get big things done. And you see the writing on the wall. You're like, even if I get reelected, I'm going to be here in the minority party and it's going to suck. So am I really going to sign up for that? The second factor is that right now the climate in Congress is very, very negative and spiteful. Where someone told me that the Capitol or the halls of Congress used to be like a shopping mall. Even at like 6, 7 p.m. because everyone's just like going around. Well, there's like a lot of energy, a lot of life. You're like walking around, staff's like, doing work. Now they say all the doors are closed and it's like like a ghost mall or the vibe is really negative. People are just trying to get out of there. Staff are very demoralized. Part of this was the January 6th insurrection where it changed the energy, made people not feel safe. And that there have been a ton of death threats to various members of Congress, much more so than at earlier points. So if you were a Democratic member of Congress, you're like, wait, why am I like coming back for this stuff?
What's my upside?
Yeah, what's my upside? So you're seeing a bunch of people retire. Will that hurt Democrats' chances of limiting their losses? Yes, it will, because you'd much rather have an experienced incumbent with lots of money running in a seat rather than someone new. Yeah, so the prospects of Republicans taking the House next year, I think everyone recognizes, are very, very high. This week on Forward, Build Back Better. Is it dead? Is it coming back? Is it on life support? We give our read here. Plus Omicron. Why you should probably expect to get it at some point, unfortunately. And why the new Spider-Man movie is the future that we want. This week on Forward. And we're back. Zach is in his parents' crafts room with a mic in his face, looking like he's reporting the weather from indoors. Welcome, Zach. I guess you're home for the holidays.
Happy holidays, Andrew. Do not assume that I grew up in a house big enough that warranted a craft room. It's a bit of an overinvestment into the crafts as a hobby, I think, from my mother's side of things. But I'm in the craft room.
I could have been in our studio talking to an empty chair. We could have done like a reenactment of the RNC or something.
We could have.
but instead we are here to talk about a few big topics. Number one is Build Back Better, the incredible drama out of DC. Really such a mess. But I will say that it looks like it's been somewhat tamped down already, and what should have been an internal conversation just happened to have been made public. So we can rehash the drama that if people haven't heard about it. But Zach, thoughts?
Dude, what a mess, man. So high level, guys, Build Back Better has not passed yet, and Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, has said he's out, and it was very public. And my original thought, Andrew, was here we are with a Washington, D.C. food fight while the country is burning. And so you had Manchin saying, Joe Biden, your team has pissed me off and this bill isn't going to work. And then the White House team made a statement that just threw the guy under the bus and said he was awful. That's my high-level thought. I think we should dive in. Andrew, my question for you, I think you essentially called this. No, you said like you're gonna have this is gonna get worse before it gets better. I think I don't know if that was your exact quote, but you were kind of pessimistic on this. Am I right?
Well, I was pessimistic that it was going to get done by year end, which made me very, very upset because you have 62 million Americans who are benefiting from the enhanced child tax credit, and if it gets delayed past year end, then they're going to miss a payment. At this point, if we miss a payment and then they come back in February, that would be the absolute best case. But I was dubious that it was going to be passed by year end, just from the calendar, from the magnitude of it, from the public statements. And so here's the way the drama seems to have unfolded, where uh, they were still apart. And then the Biden White House came out with a statement saying, hey, it's not going to happen and it's Joe Manchin's fault. And then Manchin apparently got really, really pissed off by this. And then a few days later went on Fox News and was like, hey, I'm out. And the White House tried to call him before he went on air, and he didn't take that call. He then did an interview the next day, and you're right that the Biden White House then released a statement essentially accusing him of dishonesty, saying, hey, he'd been on board with this a few days later, and hopefully he changes his mind again. It just made it seem like, like Joe Manchin is like flip-flopping. And then Manchin the next day gets interviewed and says that the White House is staff-driven, and this is the staff, and they know what they did. And so Manchin did something very, very generous, which is he didn't trash Joe Biden. He trashed his staff, which then actually gives you a bit of a path back. And Joe Biden and Joe Manchin had a call. And these guys have known each other for decades. And so apparently cooler heads may be prevailing, and Joe Manchin may come back in January ready to deal, which, by the way, was where everything was, like a week ago. It's like things are kind of slow walking, but everyone thought that there was a deal to be made. And so it seems like this is just miscommunication playing out for all to see. But a couple of things you can lay at the White House's feet. And when you say White House, I guess in this case it's the staff. It's like, number one, name checking Joe Manchin as the cause for it not passing by year end was probably the wrong move, because it seems to have just pissed Joe Manchin off and result in egg in everyone's face. And number two, when he goes and announces that he's out, accusing him of dishonesty, doesn't seem productive, even if you feel that or believe that, because the math is still the math. You need 50 senators to pass this thing, or some version of it. You've been building up to it for months and months. And so you can look at this and say that the White House misjudged and miscommunicated where Manchin's concerned. And hopefully, the harm isn't anything people can't walk back from.
So it's unique for him because his state is what, plus 30, 40 points for Trump, right?
Yeah, plus 39 Trump.
He doesn't have to play Team Dem. He's in a rare position. We've talked about this before. His statement essentially said if he can't explain it back home, he can't vote for it. He basically said it was too expensive, citing rising debt, inflation, and because of the rising threats geopolitically, specifically Russia and China, he called out if we have massive debt, we won't be able to fight back or defend ourselves. And then he also mentioned, I think, things that hit close to home in West Virginia, issues with the energy portions of Build Back Better, where it would risk the reliability of our electric grid and increase our dependence on foreign supply chains. Talked about what happened in both Texas and California over the past 2 years, and that if we accelerate too fast, that's what happens, whether he's right or not sure. And then the White House said they were really strong in their punchback on the expenditure side, whether they're accurate or not. They said the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, talked about that there's no inflation for this bill in the short term, and it reduces inflationary pressures in the long term. It lowers the cost of a bunch of things. They claimed that Build Back Better is the most fiscally responsible major bill that Congress has considered in years and reduces the deficit in the long run. That's a direct quote. And so they punched back pretty hard on the budget side of things, but they did not punch hard or very hard back on the climate change piece. All they said was that he's wrong, and that Build Back Better will produce a job-creating, clean energy future for this country, including West Virginia. That was their only statement on it. So I don't know if your thoughts were, if you've looked into the climate side of Build Back Better, or if you think this is just food fighting and hand waving and none of this matters in terms of getting it done, or do these specifics actually matter in your opinion?
Well, West Virginia is its own place. It's highly coal dependent in terms of the economy. It has the 6th highest poverty rate in the country, but it is Trump plus 39. So one of the dynamics here is that Joe Manchin has said very openly, it's like, hey, you want me to leave the Democratic Party? I'll leave. And then the Democrats immediately are like, no. Like that's not what we mean. And the Republicans have very openly said, hey, Joe, join us. We would love it. And so one of the facts I saw that I found interesting, and this is from the People's Basics, which is like a friendly podcast. And so they said, look, 5% of Democrats are not for Build Back Better. And so if you have a couple of senators who aren't for it, that actually matches up.
Checks out.
Like if you have 50 senators, 2 senators maybe aren't for it entirely, it's 4%. Yeah, it's like that makes sense. But apparently about 34% of Republicans are for Build Back Better, and 0 Republicans are for it. And so like that's the mismatch. And this is the argument I would make, is that, and people are looking up saying, oh, it's that like this drama is upsetting. The fact that the Democrats don't have unanimity on this stuff should not be surprising, though, because you have a very, very big tent party that's stretching all the way from Joe Manchin to the other extreme. Pramila Jayapal, I guess, would embody the opposite extreme. And so you have to look at the other side and say, again, like that the problem is polarization. It's the lack of bipartisanship. It's the fact that 0 Republicans are willing to be for any aspect of this, which then puts the Democrats in this very tenuous position where they're trying to do it through reconciliation, can't lose a single vote. And the proposal that I sent out there, a lot of other people sent out there too, is like, look, if you just vote on the child tax credit, you might get 10 Republican senators who are for it. I can say very confidently Mitt Romney's for it, so that gets you like 51, and then there are a bunch of others that are at least willing to contemplate it. And so the problem now is that you have a 2-party system that requires someone to have a real majority to legislate, because the other party won't help you at all. And then you wind up with Joe Manchin having this much clout and power. And then if West Virginia has a particular take on an issue, let's say climate change, that becomes the game changer. Yeah, deal breaker in this case. Though I do think that Joe Manchin's coming back in January, and that there's still going to be a deal to be done. You know why? Because no one has a choice. Like the entire Team Dem and the Biden administration have been building up to this for not eons, but 5-6 months. So they can't just go to 0. Joe Manchin is still a Dem. His constituents still do have problems. There are a lot of parts of this bill that he's already said he's open for. Even his self-reporting is like, look, he's game for 1.5 trillion, though he wants it to be paid for. And the Congressional Budget Office, here's the way they do things, is like they think that if you have a new program, then the new program sticks around, which, by the way, is correct. And then the way the DC bill measures it is like, hey, we just have this thing for 1 year.
Just 5 years.
Not even 5 years, man, 1 year. So, so if you look at it, it legitimately is like, hey, this thing's 10 times more expensive than you say it's going to be. And the CBO is generally accurate on that. And everyone knows it.
My question, Andrew, is when you were running for mayor in New York, you talked about when you're running a budget like this, if you're going to spend, you have to spend on things that generally grow the pie.
You want to, for sure.
In theory, right? So and they're tough decisions. I remember one of the best ones you had talked about was like, okay, in theory, and from a human level, is hiring 100,000 social workers a good idea? Like, yeah, that's going to make a lot of people healthier, stronger, and whole. They're going to do a lot of wholesome work, but are they going to grow the economy so that I have more budget to pay for them 2, 3, 10 years from now? Probably not, given the nature of their work. And so investing, at least in the beginning with stuff like this, when you're in a deficit, to things that are going to grow the economy, grow the pie, and make it bigger for next time so that you can pay for those social workers.
Well, for the record, using that as an example, I think the social workers are a good investment, but continue.
Okay, whatever it was, right? Forgive me.
But it's something else.
Well, there's certain things that where they're helping people, but they're helping like stop bleeding as opposed to growing, right? That's what I'm getting. Are there measures in Build Back Better that you think grow the pie, or you think is it the same logic at the federal level? I don't know what your thoughts are there in terms of making this, in terms of the economic stimulus pieces of this.
Yeah, I stand up and down and just champion the child tax credit, because to me that's a pie grower for sure. It's like you put money into the hands of families that are close to the waterline, and then their kids are healthier, better able to learn, have the school supplies, less stress in the household. And they're going to spend every single dollar where? The freaking grocery store, daycare centers, small businesses locally, like you name it. Like that money is going to go, it's probably going to get spent more than once. And so you're alleviating poverty, you're improving people's lives. And one of the things about the example you cited with the social workers is that when people fail, it's very, very expensive.
Right.
Like if a family ends up on the street, incredibly expensive. Use the New York example. It's like a homeless person in New York, if they wind up in the sheltering system, is costing something absurd, like $72,000 a year or so. You look at it and be like, wait a minute, you just like pay for someone's rent on that. And it's like, you theoretically could, because we have very, very expensive dysfunctional systems. So if there is something I'm pumped about, it is the child tax credit. There are other elements of the mega bill that I'm warm to, but none of them delivers a bang for the buck like the child tax credit.
I like the prescription drug.
Speaking of, they can negotiate for lower prescription drug prices. I mean, that thing is approved by something like 75% of Americans because it's obvious. Right. I didn't think that had survived, Zach. That's in there.
It probably is trimmed. Who knows?
I thought the medical lobbyists managed to kill that thing.
I mean, I'm curious your prediction here. Do we end up with like a watered down version of the original Build Back Better, which was so all encompassing, and we're going to get like half measures on all of these? Or do we end up with like one or two big things that will work and a bunch of other, less important or smaller, let's call it nonsense?
I think we wind up with a watered down Build Back Better. I like the Dems don't have a choice but to try and keep pushing it through. It seems like Joe Manchin wants to do a deal, and that those are the main players right now. I will say though that when this stuff came out, it made me very sad, and I think it should make everyone very sad. Is that you have such clear dysfunction at a DC, and it turns out just like real mismanagement, real just miscommunication from people who should be on the same team and have had long-standing working relationships. The whole thing is just sad. And it's particularly sad for the, again, tens of millions of Americans who were hoping that they'd get a check in January like they have the last number of months. So I've been sad really the last number of days, even though now it looks like they're going to come back to the table. Maybe nothing has changed. You will wind up with some kind of watered down version of this thing, I think. All of that said, apparently it gets harder and harder to pass a bill in the next term, or not the legislative term, where when they come back from the holidays, because now it's election year time, things get harder, apparently. But I think they'll pass some watered down version, in part because they've been baking this thing for so long. And Manchin has been on the record saying he'd approve something at around like $1.5 trillion.
Would have been better to say, okay, I'm going to pass 10 bills. One's a child tax credit, one's universal pre-K, one's a negotiation for prescription drugs. Like, get everybody on the record on each one and let people make their own compromises that way, instead of putting it all into one kind of big like comeback plan. It's because of this reconciliation process weirdness, man. Like they had to smash it all together because they're trying to pass it along narrow party lines on a technicality to get around the filibuster.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't fully understand. Not claiming to be a DC expert, just an outsider talking to you with an opinion.
It's good, man. You represent like
Majority of
the
something.
vast majority
All
of
of us
Americans
who
are
are
the same.
indifferent-ish.
Yeah, so that there's a narrow way that you can pass bills just along like a simple majority. So in this case, it's like 50.1 votes because they get
Right.
Kamala as the tiebreaker. And there are certain things you're not allowed to do. Like reconciliation, what they do is they say it's like, hey, all of this is budgetary. There's like a giant game being played. It's one reason why certain things that they want to touch, like immigration reform, they're actually rules saying, no, you can't do that through this process.
Got it.
So that's why they need all 50, and they had to do it this way. It's really a mess, in a way. Like that, there is like an argument to be made that like Democrats are trying to govern as if they have a more durable majority than they have. Which I don't hate in the sense it's like, yeah, shoot your shot, like go for it, but
Right.
in the sense that but that's why Joe Manchin has so much power.
Right. And also in T-minus 11
Months.
to 10 months, you've got, you can assume it's tough. It's a tough assumption you're a Democrat, but you got to assume you're going to lose a bunch of seats. And your majority.
Oh yeah, I think just about everyone knows that the Republicans are going to take the House in November, unless something freaking like dramatic changes. I have a hard time imagining even what it would be. So just to throw some math out there, and we've probably done this before, but right now Democrats have a 5-seat majority. Traditionally, the party in power in the White House loses 10 to 15 seats. So even if you had like a normal off cycle, you would imagine the Republicans win. And guess what? The Republicans just won in Virginia, where Biden won by 10 points. Guess what? Like Joe Biden is tough to say this out loud, but Joe Biden is like nearly historically unpopular president at this stage. So you put this stuff in, you'd be like, yeah, Republicans take the House. The real question is, do Republicans take the Senate? Now, the Senate is tougher because the map actually lays out better for Democrats for the Senate. Like the number of Democratic senators who are up for re-election or in competitive races is low relative to the number of Republicans. But like, if you have a big enough wave, Democrats could lose the Senate too. But that's the one that they could be, trying to hold. If you do play that out, though, if Republicans have the House and Democrats have the Senate, what happens from the Democratic side? Next to nothing, So,
Yeah.
so you do have this 10 months to try and get something across the finish line. Realistically, not even 10 months. Nothing's going to pass in the few months prior to re-election to November. You probably have like max 5 or 6 months in the beginning of next year, because every House member will be out there trying to, like get reelected. And by the way, you're seeing like an anomalously high number of Democratic retirements from the House.
They're like, I'm out.
Yeah. So
is that because they're
like,
old, or they're like, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore?
Oh, some of them aren't old at all. Like Stephanie Murphy out of Florida was like the standard bearer for the moderates. I think they're called blue dogs, problem solvers. Like she's the head of a lot of that stuff. So, and she's, I don't know, like 40s, like
Wow,
50, like maybe 50, I think she's in her 40s. So she just announced she was not going to run again. Another person in California just announced they're not going to run again, like that. So there are a number of things going on. If you are a member of Congress and you're a Democrat, like this has been your opportunity to get big things done. And you see the writing on the wall. You're like, even if I get reelected, I'm going to be here in the minority party and it's going to suck. So am I really going to sign up for that? The second factor is that right now the climate in Congress is very, very negative and spiteful. Where someone told me that the Capitol or the halls of Congress used to be like a shopping mall, even at like 6, 7 p.m. because everyone's just like going around. Well, there's like a lot of energy, a lot of life. You're like walking around, staff's like, doing work. Now they say all the doors are closed and it's like like a ghost mall, or like the vibe is really negative. People are just trying to get out of there. Staff are very demoralized. Part of this was the January 6th insurrection, where like it changed the energy, made people not feel safe, and that there have been a ton of death threats to various members of Congress, much more so than at earlier points. So if you were Democratic member of Congress, you're like, wait, why am I like coming back for this stuff?
What's my upside?
Yeah, what's my upside? So you're seeing a bunch of people retire. Will that hurt Democrats' chances of, like limiting their losses? Yes, it will, because, you'd much rather have an experienced incumbent with lots of money running in a seat rather than someone new. Yeah, so the prospects of Republicans taking the House next year, I think everyone recognizes, are very, very high.
Yeah, I bet the calculus is pretty simple. It's like you can leave here as the rational, sane one, or stay on trying to plug holes in the bathtub. Whatever your bathtub analogy, where you're trying to solve a problem that can't be solved and get dragged down with it. Yeah, it makes sense. Oh.
Yeah, so those are the prospects ahead. There's still a window of opportunity in the first quarter of next year trying to get something done.
Speaking of things I need to get done, let's talk about Omicron. That's how you say it, right?
It's Omicron, brother.
Damn it. Omicron. Okay. Omicron is, as someone who's been in New York till recently, I'm now in Florida, ripping through the city, but not in the same way like prior COVID outbreaks have gone, where everyone's getting it, but they don't really have symptoms. And the hospitalization and death rates are far lower. I don't know what let's talk about, I guess, your perspective on what's happening with the new variant here.
Oh yeah, Omicron's super contagious. There were stories where like people went to a wedding and like half the people got it, and unless you were at a wedding where like people were like making out with each other or something, like that seems like awfully
that's high. Yeah.
yeah, it's high, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not that freaking proximate in a lot of these environments. What did I see in the number? It's like more than 5 times as contagious.
It's 73% of new COVID cases right now, about to pass the Delta variant spike in cases, where our 7-day average is 146K.
Essentially impossible to contain its spread. Contact tracing, ridiculously hard. One of my proxies for this stuff, Zach, is what's going on in the NBA. I mean, have you noticed this stuff? Like 70 NBA players have gone into health and safety protocols, which means they got tested and were positive, or were, in close proximity to someone who tested positive.
Yep.
But a lot of them have just tested positive.
The NHL canceled like basically all their games from now till Christmas. They took a week off essentially.
So to your point, this is a different type of variant in that it's super contagious, but it's largely pretty mild, particularly if you've been vaccinated. There was one NBA player who said his main symptom was boredom. Now an NBA player who's been vaccinated as a super athlete is not a normal specimen, but it was still like that. That is what's happening, where a lot of people are like, I felt like a little cold. It felt like this, especially if you've been vaccinated. This is going to call for a different type of approach. I think for the average person, you should do what's reasonable, which in my opinion would include being vaccinated and getting a booster, and then wearing a mask and doing some social distancing. But all of that said, you should expect that you're probably going to get Omicron. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is not like a pure avoidance situation. This is make yourself resistant and resilient, take some precautions, and then expect to get it. And then, unless you have pre-existing conditions, expect to be fine. Like the hospitalization rate for Omicron is very, very low if you've been vaccinated.
So I've been doing some research on this, and I wanted to get your opinion, but also give some takes here. So our friend of the show, Sagar Enjeti, co-host of Breaking Points with Crystal Ball. And then he had an interesting thread that sparked this conversation. And then I talked to a consultant who we trust, because there are a lot of consultants we don't always trust in DC. But he said, he basically, I want to preface this by saying I think I'm vaccinated. I'm going to get my booster. I think these are a good thing. Donald Trump is for the vaccine and the booster. Like there's the data is pretty unanimous that it's keeping you out of the hospital, and keeping you from dying. But it hasn't really, what Sagar was saying, that it hasn't really shown to kind of stop the spread very much. Like there's some evidence on viral load, but it's inconclusive. So the vaccine have kicked ass at preventing hospitalizations and death. But what Sagar was saying, they're not always helping with spreading. And what the solution actually should be is way better testing and a massive investment in at-home or easy access to rapid testing. And right now you're seeing this. I saw this at home. There are massive lines to get tested in New York City and DC and in major cities. And in your point, Andrew, we're in a country right now where 82% of adults have gotten at least one shot. You've got about 3/4 of the entire population is vaccinated. That last 25 or so percent is not, the low-hanging fruit's gone. They're probably not getting there, right? Those are folks that either are allergic to it or will never do it. They don't trust the government, and that's tough. And I think the White House put out a statement. Jeff Zients, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's the White House COVID response coordinator. He said, he made this basically kind of villainize those who are unvaccinated. He said, the quote was, "We are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated."
Dude,
you are doing what's up?
Dude. So Omicron, the long O is not right. It's just just make an AH, Omicron.
Damn it. I got it right the first time, or whatever.
Yeah, you got it right the first time. You corrected yourself to the wrongness.
All right.
Yeah, continue.
So his quote was, "We are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You have done the right thing, and we will get through this. For the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm." And I think the mandates on vaccines, I think, are counterproductive, because the folks that are not getting their vaccine are going to have the same reaction to the mandate. And I think what they should do is mandate tests. And I'm curious your thought on this. Mandate testing. So you don't have to get vaccinated, but if you're not vaccinated and you want a job, companies are requiring you to test daily, every 12 hours, whatever it is. And the government sponsors that. So make it a pain in the ass, but you still have the freedom to do it. Like, this is just our new normal. Like, you can wear whatever pants you want, but you have to wear pants, is kind of the vein of freedom I'm talking about. I don't know what you thought there, but
there's some companies that are doing this, that are just being like, "Hey, we're going to test you up the wazoo, test you every day."
Yeah.
I just met with a venture capitalist yesterday who said that he thinks it is unconscionable that we don't have tests in every house, could send them to all of you. He said that, that unit cost of a test in terms of for the manufacturer is pennies, nickels at most. That there are some instances where they're charging $30 for something that's costing them less than 30 cents. Good old US of A. And, so the fact that you have lines around the block in New York for testing, I don't know about you all, but like that makes me not particularly want to stand in that line.
Yeah, I don't want to stand it. I want to walk near it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be long. You figure some of those people probably have it.
Probably
because,
have
like,
it. Yeah, because they're going to
test it. It's like a very, very COVID-y line.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is common sense. So my friend, the VC, was like, we should just be sending everyone tests like all the freaking time. Yeah. And he's right. Like like Omicron's a different animal, and our current setup is not well designed for it in ways, because it's much more contagious and more mild. And so something like pervasive at-home testing would make much more sense than our current setup.
So I have an employee. I'm gonna leave out what organization, because I don't want this to become a thing at that org. But I have an employee that has an allergy to all of the types of the vaccines. Can't get the vax. There's a high risk of health risk by getting the vaccine. And then I have another employee
Allergic
that
to
same award.
vaccines, eh? I've heard that
Yeah.
one before, and I'm kidding.
But like her whole family's that she's really
Like,
lefty. Let's call it that way. She's liberal, right? But another employee that's a cancer survivor and like is highly susceptible to COVID and is like is very, very cautious about being around those who are unvaccinated. And as an organization, what do you do there, right? Because it's tough to punish either. I don't want to punish either of them for their own health situations, right? So we try to do as much remote as we can, but it's not always feasible.
Remote that thing, yeah.
And it's, I think for the employee that actually is allergic to it, now there's a small subset, but you don't want to punish them. But you also have to take care of the public health, right? So I think like the NFL, I think did some things right and some things really wrong. I think what they did was, if you're not vaccinated, you got to get tested way more often. But what they did was that if you tested positive, if you were unvaccinated, you had way more severe consequences than if you were vaccinated. And that at a certain point got a little unfair and a little ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers went on a rant about this. I didn't agree with everything, but some points he made were accurate. So I don't know the solution. I do think testing would solve a lot of that than trying to have this like mandated vaccinated society. It just might be too tough and cause a lot of resentment from the populace.
I think it depends on the circumstances, truly. It's like, like if you're in a job in a role where you're going to be interfacing heavily with other people and the rest of it, I think it's reasonable to say, look, like, we're sticking you in that environment.
That's a good point.
Like, and if you're going to do that job, it's like, you got to be vaccinated.
And then that's a company decision rather than a government decision, or can the government say industry wide, or you know what I'm saying? Like that's where I'm getting at. Where's the rubber meet the road in terms of the decision maker?
So for the government, I mean, they're looking at their own employees and saying, like,
yeah, they do government employees, right?
Yeah. Like I'm looking at you, and it's like, and by the way, a lot of these jobs involve like being around a lot of people, like right. on the regular. I think that's wholly appropriate. Like you said, like the gray area comes when they're saying, hey, private employers do this, do that, right. And then, there are ways that the government can twist people's arms. In various ways, and that is like the tougher call, the gray area where, I prefer to leave it to the firms because the firms have a better sense of what's going on with their employees.
But that's that we do this. We've done it for measles and mumps and polio and other things. So this stuff's delicate. I think Sagar made some really good points. I thought the consultant obviously made some good points about this was a conscious decision by the Biden administration to basically go to war with the the unvaccinated. But that said, like one of the things that's crazy is a lot of the folks in the military, like military vaccinated numbers went up pretty like you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Here's part, like, here are the things that are tough, man. It's like, if you leave people to their own devices, a lot of people are not going to get vaccinated. By and large, population-wide, it's a good thing to be vaccinated. Like, and so if you're the government, like, what are you going to do? It's like, you're going to encourage everyone to get vaccinated.
Go all in.
And so what's funny is I get asked about, my take on this in different ways. And it's like, you have a very different take depending upon what seat you're in. If I was the head of the government, I'd be like, we got to do everything in our power to get everyone vaccinated. No, genuinely, it's just like, like population wide, it like makes sense. And like, let's freaking do it. Now if you're not in that seat, then, you have a different perspective, because you understand that people are in different situations and it's more nuanced and the rest of it.
That makes a lot of sense. How dare you have nuance, Andrew? There's no room for that in my 140 character
But
tweet.
I will say, I've been vaccinated. Like, I think everyone should get vaccinated. And if I was the head of the government, I'd be pushing everyone to get vaccinated. So we have cataloged dysfunction in DC, nothing new, but very dispiriting. Talked about how Omicron, wildly contagious, and, you should take precautions, but probably going to get it. So we're trying now to end on uplifting notes here on the Forward Podcast, and I'm going to make a case that is, I hope, very upbeat and positive, which is that The new Spider-Man movie is something we should be excited about on a couple of levels.
No spoilers, right? No
No
spoilers, to be
spoilers.
clear?
No
Okay.
spoilers. So number one, this movie did gangbusters business. It is the second biggest opening of all time. It beat out Avengers: Infinity War. It's right behind Endgame. And it just goes to show that if you have a compelling offering, then people will still come out in droves to go to a real life in-person movie theater, spend some of their hard-earned money, put their butt in that seat, and watch what I will say. I saw this movie. It is a very, very excellent movie. And so, number one, there is still hope for real-life in-person experiences like movie theaters.
That's good. I think they did a really good job marketing it too, between the lead characters dating and the rollout. I think they let a lot of
You
people...
mean that pretend romance? No, I'm kidding. It seems real.
It might be fake, and if it's fake, I bought
No.
it hook, line, and sinker, baby.
It seems real. It seems real.
It does seem pretty real.
One of the most uplifting pieces of content on the internet, if you haven't seen it, you should go to see it right now, is the lip sync battle between Tom Holland and Zendaya, the Singing in the Rain video. Zach, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. And Tom Holland showed to me that how talented he was, and that without, a side of him I hadn't seen before, or at least when I first watched it.
If you don't know what Andrew Yang is talking about right now, just go to YouTube and Google Singing in the Rain Tom Holland, and you will be glad you did, because it's the most delightful 4 minutes of content. And so you see future boyfriend and girlfriend, Tom Holland and Zendaya, in a lip sync battle. They're both phenomenal, but Tom Holland kind of next levels this thing. He does something that in a way, it kind of sets such a high water mark for a lip sync battle that there's no place to go but down. You know what I mean? Like you already kind of like defined the form, and then everyone else is a pale imitation. Anyway, so check that out. That'll be a bit of uplift for sure. But the second reason why I think that this movie is such an exciting marker for the future is that it does things that no one thought were possible. And that's kind of what we need in American life today. I'm going to just throw a couple of parallels. It's like you have this dysfunctional duopoly, and it's like, oh, we're trudging along and everyone's sad. And then Andrew Yang comes along and is like, hey, let's start a new party, the Forward Party. And let's, by the way, try and make it so that new parties can emerge that aren't just us. Like, anyone who wants like a vibrant system. And then people are like, oh, it's not possible. It can't be done. There is stuff that goes on in this movie that you would legitimately say, like, this cannot be possible. Like things that some fan fiction writer, even they would be like, there's no way. Like this thing just doesn't seem. And they did it in like a major tent pole. Like at this point, maybe like a franchise defining tent pole. They just pushed so many boundaries. They integrated different worlds and universes. And so right now you have this political universe that is so staid and insular, and it's like Beltway this and cable news that. And then there's this entire world outside of it that we need to kind of combine and integrate with the world of politics. It's happening in media. You can sense it. There's some like alternative media voices that are just rising in popularity because people are so tired of the nonsense and the BS. And so you can imagine what like a normal Spider-Man movie would be like. And now it would just seem like such a crushing disappointment compared to what they did with this movie. It's kind of funny to say, but like I feel like this movie gives you like a sense of what's actually possible if, for example, a couple of major movie studios, let's call them Sony and Marvel, got together, combined all their IP, took 20 years of movie history and like smashed them all together. If Sony and Marvel can do it, maybe the American people can do it too. Maybe like Ford and libertarians and socialists and Democrats and Republicans and independents can all make it happen.
Wow. That's like, frankly, not that they need it because it looks like they're killing it, but that's a pretty ringing endorsement for a movie, Andrew, from you. So I was gonna see it this week. Maybe I'll go tonight. Maybe I'm like, get out of my chair and buy
See
a
it and
ticket.
like
Let's do this
freaking
thing.
send us your review, man. You can text me because that movie was like there were a number of times watching the movie I was like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. Like it's like this stuff that you would imagine in a dream, and then like they invested whatever like tens hundreds of millions of dollars in it.
I love it, man. And I like it. We're ending this on uplifting things. I'm going to rattle off a couple too. We have an HIV vaccine in the works that's looking really positive. And it's the same mRNA technology used in the COVID vax that seems to be working. It's not official yet, but we're in human trials at this point, which is super exciting. There's a company called Air Company, which you can debate the name, that makes alcohol out of air. Have you seen this?
No, but I like it. I would experience.
But it's
that
crazy
air
that they're
alcohol.
creating a product that's like extremely good for the environment to produce, or no cost to the environment. Now I've not tried this. I need to buy it to test it out. And maybe it's mad expensive. I'm not sure. But I like the trend of companies like that making money selling a product people need with basically no like carbon neutral or carbon negative.
Look at you promoting
right?
air alcohol. You don't know shit about it, and you haven't
Don't know
tried
shit about it, but it's still cool. It's worth trying, right?
It sounds cool. Forward, sponsored by Air Alcohol.
Air Company.
Continue.
Air Company, if you're listening to this, we would love a sponsorship. And the other one I'll leave you with is, this stuff just fascinates me. There is a professor, Eduardo Fernandez, who's the director of neuroengineering at the University of Miguel Hernandez in Spain, who has gotten us one step closer to helping blind people see. He's basically created this, like, I don't want to call it a bionic eye because that's too far in, but basically, instead of trying to fabricate
it's a bionic
and like recreate,
eye.
Yeah, I guess so. Instead of recreating the eye, though, it's like plugging into your nerves, and then there's a camera that's like sending, but it's using the brain signals that we normally get from our eye to help your brain interpret what's going on out in the world. And it's been implanted in a woman's head, and she's like had like pretty good success.
And then the first thing she does is she goes to a police station, leans into the desk and says, "I'll be back," and then walks out, and then crashes her car through the front. Maybe
Which Terminator is this? This Terminator 2?
That's one, brother.
That's one. There's been way too many Terminator movies. They've tried. It's like all these future movies, you see people get healed real quickly, and I just don't think we've gotten there yet. But I think we're poised to take a leap. Whether it's their stuff in spinal cord injuries or bionic eyes or bionic limbs.
Or slowing
awesome,
and reversing brain aging, man. I mean, that's like the main one, like that my guy is working on at MIT. And you should know, Andrew Yang is not one of those like people who's like, we're gonna live forever, we're gonna do all this stuff. It's like I'm not that guy. But if we can slow down deterioration and that leads to Alzheimer's and the rest of it, I mean that's going to just save lives and like improve people's quality of life in like an enormous way.
You know the Black Mirror episode where they upload their consciousness into like a different reality? Like there's one, sure. I think it's the 80s one. Yeah. Are you in favor of that, or is that too far in terms of living forever?
I think if we did it, it would just be, I'd be dead, and then there'd be like some simulated version of my consciousness yucking it up in like some software interface. Like, does that do anything for me? It's like, I don't know. My loved ones, if they want to hang out with a simulation of me, maybe. It's like, as you can tell, I'm not that into it.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled with living forever either. 'Cause I think the finite aspect of life makes it better, as much as it makes it harder.
I'm 46. I'm turning 47. They're like different life stages that occurred like different times. I mean, like the things that I'm into now, so different than 10 years ago or 15 years ago or the rest of, I mean, obviously I'm still seeing the same movies, so I mean that stays the same, but like
Spider-Man didn't change.
It was just like the way you want to relax and enjoy yourself. Yeah, it's like like that maturation. It's generally a good thing. I will say too, though, that like there is something. I looked at the happiness curves of men. This will make you happy, Zach, but apparently like men tend to get more chilled out over time. Middle-aged and like older guys. This will be good news for all the dudes listening to this, but like apparently we do get more content and relaxed as we get older. There's like an intensity to being young that ends up kind of moderating over time. Good times.
I think that's a good thing. I think being monogamous relationship has helped me with that. What do they say?
You hear that, lady? Zach might be off the market. Hear that, monogamous? Did he just out himself as being a boyfriend?
Wow.
There goes half of our female listener base.
There they go. Sorry, ladies.
They weren't here for me.
I think most people are here for you, man. I'm here for color commentary.
Yeah, I think there's like a time and a place, and like, it includes like aging. Aging. We want to stay healthy and whatnot, and vital and productive, and positive. But there's like a series of stages that I think are part of life. And on that happy note, happy holidays. This is going to come out on Christmas Eve. Hope that everyone is having a wonderful holiday with loved ones like Zach. Zach's visiting his family. Hug your mom, your family members, your friends. Treat yourself well. We have a bit of a break. 2022 is going to be the year of some stuff. I think it's going to be better than this year. So yeah, just try and get like a true rest, relax, treat yourself well, take a walk, commune with nature a little bit, and we'll all be back at it in no time.
Happy holidays, everybody.